Welcome back to our session 3 of the history of Juneteenth, a history book for new readers. This is going to be our final session as we finish chapter 6 and 7, and then students will have a what is Juneteenth quiz to take on forms. So we're going to pick up. We just finished new challenges with the Civil Rights Movement. From the 1940s to the 1970s, Juneteenth celebrations were overshadowed by the Civil Rights Movement. In the 1960s, leaders like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, and Ella Baker created organizations and fought against inequality. They wanted fair treatment and equal rights. They organized marches and protests. Martin Luther King Jr. organized events like the March on Washington, where 250,000 people gathered to support equal rights for Black Americans. Many groups worked together to protest segregation and fight for voting rights. They faced extreme violence. When they marched to protest unfair laws, the police often attacked them. Many protesters were put in jail. During this time, fewer Juneteenth celebrations took place. People were focused on trying to regain the rights taken away by Jim Crow laws. In 1968, Coretta Scott King, the widow of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., brought attention to Juneteenth. She helped plan a protest called the Poor People's Campaign. Protesters traveled to Washington, D.C., to ask the government to help poor Americans find work and housing. King and the organizers picked June 19th as the day the campaign would end. All right, go ahead and grab a piece of paper and put your name on it, head it, Juneteenth, session 3. And the first question is, why do you think fewer people celebrated Juneteenth during the Civil Rights Movement? Go ahead and pause this video, respond to that question, and when you're done, resume the video. After the campaign was over, many protesters brought Juneteenth celebrations back to their own communities. The fight for equality continued, but Juneteenth was celebrated more and more. When? 1936. Juneteenth is celebrated at the Texas State Fair. 1938. Emancipation Day is made a day of observance in Texas. 1963. Martin Luther King Jr. leads the March on Washington. 1968. The Poor People's Campaign ends on Juneteenth. Chapter 7, Juneteenth today. An official holiday. By the 1970s, Juneteenth was celebrated in many parts of the country. Black communities honored Juneteenth and their own emancipation days. People gathered at churches, in parks, and at community centers. The celebrations included rallies for justice and equality. Emancipation Day had been honored as a day of observance in Texas since 1938, but Juneteenth was not an official state holiday. In the 1970s, a state representative, Al Edwards, called for an amendment to make Juneteenth a state holiday. It would mean many schools, businesses, and parts of the government would be closed on Juneteenth. Everyone would have the day off to celebrate. After a hard fight, Edwards finally succeeded. In 1980, Texas made Juneteenth a state holiday. All right, let's jump back in the think tank on your paper. Number 2. If you had to create a holiday that everyone celebrated, what would it be? Pause this video. Please respond to that question, and then resume the video when you're done. In 1997, the National Juneteenth Celebration Foundation, NJCF, celebrated a flag to be flown on the holiday. The flag includes one star representing the state of Texas and a bursting star representing freedom. The flag also includes the colors red, white, and blue. These colors are a reminder that African Americans are a part of American history. As Juneteenth became more popular, organizers wanted it to be a federal holiday. That meant it would be honored across the nation, not just in Texas. Since 1976, Opal Lee, a well-known Texan activist, had been advocating for Juneteenth to become a federal holiday. Lee walked long distances to show her dedication to the cause. In 2021, after the hard work of people like Opal Lee and Al Edwards, President Joe Biden signed Bill 475. This bill made Juneteenth a federal holiday. Opal Lee was recognized at the signing ceremony. When Opal Lee was 12, a group of white people burned down her home. This tragedy made her want to fight against racism. She is now known as the grandmother of Juneteenth. Celebrations today. Today, all Americans can celebrate Juneteenth. Now that it is a federal holiday, most businesses and government buildings must close for the day. Many states have begun to organize large parades or festivals. Juneteenth festivals usually include music and dancing. Local businesses decorate parade floats or serve food. In some places, people read the Emancipation Proclamation. They also sing songs and read poems by famous Black writers. Black Southerners still celebrate Juneteenth with local customs. Some people organize beauty pageants at which they crown a Miss Juneteenth. Juneteenth is about gathering with family and friends to remember the past and celebrate the future. Juneteenth started in Galveston, Texas in 1865, but it is now recognized throughout the United States. For decades, Black people faced racism, discrimination, and inequality. Even when there were fewer celebrations, Black people made sure Juneteenth was remembered. They created a tradition and then worked to make sure it was honored forever. Today, we can all celebrate the history of Juneteenth and the burst of freedom that African Americans like Sarah Ashley felt in 1865. When? 1980. Juneteenth becomes a state holiday in Texas. 1997, the NJCF creates the Juneteenth flag. 2021, Juneteenth becomes a federal holiday. So what's the history of Juneteenth? In this section, you're going to be given a quiz, and it's got 10 questions, and you can go to your forms link through your 3x3 links page to complete this forms short assessment. Good luck!